A majority of Americans say the country is headed in the wrong direction, according to new polling. Noble Predictive Insights conducted a poll between March 2nd and 5th, sampling including 2,600 respondents, more than 900 Republicans, 900 Democrats, and 770 independents, which 330 of those are true independents, according to Noble Predictive, referring to those who say that they wouldn't join with either party when asked. It is among the most comprehensive tracking polls in the country. Now, when asked, would you say that the things in the country are going in the right direction or in the wrong direction? 36% said the country is going in the right direction. 53% said the economy is going in the wrong direction. About 11% were not sure. Polling data shows that among political parties, 63% of Republican voters said the country is heading in the right direction, while 80% of Democrats said that the wrong direction is where the country is headed. 61% of independent voters saying that the country is headed in the wrong direction. When you look at some of the age demographics in this category, voters under 30 are especially pessimistic, with the majority, 62%, saying the country is on the wrong track. Hispanic or Latino voters at 58%, black voters at 66%. It was noted to be the most pessimistic in the direction of where the country is headed. Women of all ages seem to also be more pessimistic. 59% majority say that the country is on the wrong track, compared to 47% of men believing that the country is on the right track. Now, the poll's margin of error is plus or minus 1.9%. You can get more stories about this latest polling data at thecentersquare.com. But let's delve a little bit deeper here. Do Americans approve or disapprove of how President Donald Trump's handling the economy? Now, as the economy remains one of the top issues and the top issue for voters in this election year, responses typically differed by 3% or less, if at all, from Trump's overall approval rating. For example, 50% of men polled approve of Trump's performance so far, compared to just 39% of women. And when asked solely about the economy, the percentage of men remained the same, and the percentage of women dipped slightly to 36%. So the president's approval rating, only of those 2,600 registered voters, 52% disapprove altogether, while 46% approve of the president's job. And while the president's approval rating remains high among Republicans and reaches nearly 90% among those who voted for him in the most recent presidential election, the president isn't performing well among true independents. They registered as independents, don't lean Republican or Democrat, and often considered the deciding factor in elections. 65% of true independents are unhappy with Trump's performance, with just 24% approving and 7% indicating they strongly approve. Now, when it comes to the president's in the overall approval rating, as you can see in the chart, it dipped slightly in October, but has mostly remained flat in the most recent polling, with the approval percentage dipping from 48% to 46%. Now, the president polled higher with whites than with Hispanics. Latinos or blacks, and lower with suburban and urban voters than rural voters, both the economy and overall. Regionally, the South showed the strongest support for the president, with 50% indicating they approve of his job performance. His approval rating across the West, Midwest, and Northeast was virtually the same at 43%, 44%, and 44% respectively. Congressional races, with an election coming up for who will control Congress. The question was asked of those being polled: if the election for Congress were held today, who would you vote for? And while the leanings of members in either of the two major parties remain relatively stable, with roughly 85% of voters on each side choosing their own party's candidates, swing voters is where some warning signs are being shown for Republicans. Independents favored Democratic candidates over Republicans by a 10 percentage point margin, 34% to 24% respectively. A third of total independents remain undecided. However, true independents slightly favored Republicans over Democrats, 23% to 16%. More than half of true independents are still unsure. Also, looking at some of the economic indicators of those polled, voters earning under $50,000 per year favored Democrats, 46% to 38%, while voters earning between $50,000 to $100,000 annually favored Democrats, 46% to 41%. The median household income in the United States, about $83,700 in 2024, according to the U.S. Census Bureau. But the polling data, not just looking at some of those major questions, they also reviewed the sentiment of those being polled about transgender issues. The majority of voters across the country support a state ban on transgender athletes competing in girls' and women's sports, according to that latest Voters' Voice poll. Found 68% of registered voters support allowing the U.S. Supreme Court to uphold state bans on transgender women competing in sports. Across party lines, there was a clear divide emerging between Republicans and Democrats. About 88% of Republican voters supported upholding state bans on transgender women competing in women's sports, whereas 49% of Democrats said the same. About 51% of Democrat voters said that they would not support the U.S. Supreme Court upholding state bans on transgender women competing in women's sports. Only 35% of true independents said the same. In January, justices at the U.S. Supreme Court appeared skeptical of allowing transgender women to compete in girls' and women's sports. The court heard challenges in laws for Idaho, West Virginia, and others, and it'll be a major issue for the Supreme Court. But let's take a look at all of the top concerns for voters. And there's a plenty. The top concern for 37% of those polled was inflation. Healthcare came in at 31%. 29% said government corruption was among the top three most important issues in the country. The economy, illegal immigration, and national security all came in between 22 to 28%. Now, if you look there lower on the list, concerns for voters in education was at 8%, abortion at 7%, race relations at 6%, and stock market instability at 3%.